Do you get it now?
And there's all behind the scene crap that no one knows about.
See,
I need to get the hell out of here.
it's called self-preservation. You're done.
Especially something like this. Something along these lines.
Well,
Excellent.
The old fucking standards.
They did not feel like they have the capacity to make medical decisions based on their discussion.
How's that crazy, bro? Put the phone down there.
Here we go.
Why are you doing this?
I remember!
Imagine being so programmed that you have strong emotions around a subject and you don't even know why.
The question was, would anyone detect that we were sane? The answer was, no. No one ever did.
The controversy regarding the myth of mental illness and psychiatry is not about science or medicine, it's about power.
Did you know I was personally dragged into the whistleblowing about the sexual abuse, trafficking of vulnerable women at the non-profit organization with a false accusation by the female central to my story? I had support from some famous people like
One man told me about being beaten by the police and left permanently disabled because of a woman's false allegation.
It's November 2025. Now this video is inspired by something I have observed recently. When I say recently, I mean in recent history and more. And it's something I've discussed over 10 years ago and discussed since a few times and even dedicated some videos to this. And it's important for people to become aware of what's happening, perhaps to themselves. And what I've noticed are people suffering from, as a descriptive suffering, from the targeted individual psychosis. And it's sad to see what's happening to people. Now, I'm going to start off by highlighting how over the years I've noticed more and more people claiming to be whistleblowers, exposing something. Now, I'm not trying to be dismissive of whatever they may be going through in life or what they went through in life. However, there's a difference between whistleblowing information that is from a first-hand perspective, with first-hand knowledge of something that they may be an insider to, for example, working in a particular profession and having evidence of whatever it is that they're sharing. And most of all, the information that is being shared or exposed would not have been shared or exposed other than with their efforts. And what I find a lot of people claiming to be whistleblowers about is about, for example, their personal story. Again, I'm not taking away from people's stories, but they're being, as a descriptive, disgruntled about what they've experienced. And at times, a lot of times, what we see, people not being happy with outcomes, for example, within the justice system. And this does not make them whistleblowers, other than them sharing their own personal stories. And then from this, because they think that they are whistleblowing something and they're causing or being a threat to, say, for example, a governing body or someone, that they're being targeted. And then through this, we see the rise of their own personal paranoia. Now, I just want to clarify that anyone that I may be referencing in this video, it's not necessarily directed to them, except other than using them, for example, as a reference, as an examples. And it's not taking away anything that they may have or, again, are experiencing in their personal lives. Now, with that said, people who actually whistleblow and so forth don't discuss, for example, the issues of being harassed or anything else. It's just something you kind of deal with. And it's no badge of honor. And I've said in videos where, in an extreme case, if somebody wants to get you, they will, regardless of what it is. And I've shared, for example, my career paths where I would have been one of the types of people that would have been surveilling someone for work. Now, with that said, we also now see, for example, how more and more these people involved with the so-called convoy of freedom and these fake heroes, and we see the people who are far less famous than the current fake heroes talking about being put on lists and everything else, and having concerns about their whole future. These people are confusing, at best, a temporary time when they were or may have been someone of interest to authorities because of affiliation. And that's something that is common. Now, can this be abused? Of course it can. But we don't see that actually happening. And these people start to convince themselves, because they become, as a descriptive, paranoid of something, people or government or something happening, and it just totally consumes them. And that's another key thing here, is not to be consumed by anything. These people who, for example, attended the convoy, again, may have been temporarily persons of interest because of what the so-called convoy was attached to, for example, through who was donating and who was actually pushing it. And it all had come out that we have people in the U.S. military and government that actually ran the whole operation. Anyway, I digress there. But this psychosis of being a targeted individual is really skyrocketing. Now, yes, in part, we can see, for example, a lot of this being trauma-based. People were traumatized because they went a little bit over their head in whatever they thought they were doing, and they couldn't handle it. And I get the trauma. And I'm not trying to take away from people's trauma, whatever else, but this whole notion of whether it be someone claiming to be a whistleblower or someone who is allegedly being a freedom fighter, experiencing repercussions long term, I don't even know, I'm trying to wordcraft here to be kind, I guess, but these people's worries are really non-existent. And anyone's worries that there may be, for example, a person of interest, is because they're doing it to themselves by carrying on in a specific manner that's drawing attention to them. they're not, for example, being like the chameleon and surviving. And it's really sad to see this more and more, how people have adopted this paranoia, this psychosis of being targeted for the rest of their lives. And perhaps if they get involved in another event like the so-called convoy, maybe they'll attend that and be back on a temporary list until whatever is figured out, if they're actually a threat or they're going to do something really stupid, you know, whatever. But these people who claim to be whistleblowers and even freedom fighters have another thing in common, and that is being alleged victims of injustice. When they claim injustice, but it's really them not liking, for example, an outcome of a legal case, whether it be criminal or civil or whatever else. But I just really want to highlight this and bring this to everyone's attention. People who are not suffering from, I almost said delusions, but whatever you want to call it. People who are not suffering from these things maybe has a better understanding of where these people are coming from. And these people who are suffering from it maybe can reflect back into themselves and whatever it is that they're convincing themselves of, and say, well, wait a second, this has gone a little bit too far, because they realize that they're consumed. Now, I just want to close off by saying the real problem with these types of people who are either claiming to be whistleblowers or freedom fighters, they take away, once again, they take away from the efforts of real whistleblowers who have, for example, sacrificed everything and done so much. They take away efforts, attention, and even resources. And the worst thing is, they make real people look bat-poo crazy in the eyes of society overall. So where they're only focused on themselves and trying to convince the world of whatever it is that they think they are as a whistleblower or freedom something or other, then they're not thinking about the long-term effects that this has on real people. And that's all I really want to highlight here. Things to think about. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share.
And this person is starting to picture how it could have happened. And what could have been turns into what would have been, turns into what was.
So by the third interview, the memory has taken hold. And it wasn't just this once. Shaw was able to convince over 70% of participants that they committed a crime.
I was incredibly surprised at the rate that I had in terms of successfully implanting these false memories.
False memory studies like this question one of the cornerstones of the criminal justice system.
In those hundreds of cases where DNA testing has proven that these individuals were wrongly convicted, about 3/4 of the time, the convictions were based on faulty eyewitness testimony.
I've said this before, many times. How do you know when you are crazy? The answer is very simple. When you stop asking if you are. Just remember, I was one man against many. Fighting a losing battle, but I still fought to the end.
That means press on. That means endure. That means God cannot fail, and you're not going to give up. That's not an option for a child of God. This means you are going to be remembered. Listen to this and write it down if you can't remember it. You're never going to outgrow warfare. You simply must learn to fight. I hear people saying to me, oh, when is it going to get easier? When you die.